You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Saturday, 22nd of March 2014. Blackburn rape victim had injuries. Arrests made and fines paid as immigration officers crack down on illegal restaurant workers. New Ash Green solicitor Ziad Al-Rawi struck off by a solicitor's disciplinary tribunal for spending £96,000 of clients' cash. Mohammed Imran Malik, 30, charged in relation to Operation Sanctuary. Dutch populist politician Geert Wilders leads his followers in an anti-Moroccan chant. Netherlands prosecutors receive complaint over Geert Wilders' campaign for fewer Moroccans. France, Toulouse Jewish leader urges young Jews to leave. Ukraine, Europe deal may cause unrest in East. Russian troops storm Ukraine airbase in Crimea, shots fired. Thought for the day, it is a question of loyalty, isn't it? And finally, more mature or less? That is the question. UK news. Blackburn rape victim had injuries. A teenage girl allegedly raped after being picked up in a car by two men and taken to a Blackburn house had injuries including bruises and scratches, a court heard. The 15-year-old accused Imran Khan, 36, of attacking her in an upstairs bedroom at a house in Chester Street after she and her friend, aged 14, got into a Honda Civic driven by another man in the town centre. The court had previously heard that Khan and Zayed Mohammed, 45, refused to let the youngsters leave the house and took advantage of them sexually. Khan denies rape and 2 counts of detaining a child without lawful authority. The jury also heard the police interview of Mohammed of Boardman Street, Bolton. He's accused of sexual activity with a 14-year-old girl in the kitchen while Khan was upstairs, which he denies. He has also pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of detaining a child without lawful authority. World at 8. I note these Muslims rarely, if ever, plead guilty, even when caught in the act. It must be in the Quran to get the British public to pay as much money as they can get them to. It pleases Allah, if not the CPS. Arrests made and fines paid as immigration officers crack down on illegal restaurant workers. A number of illegal workers were arrested by Home Office enforcement teams at 2 Dorset restaurants. Officers visited Jidan Taj at Seabourn Road, Bournemouth, and Galaxy Pizza in Alder Road, Poole, acting on intelligence that both businesses were employing staff with no right to work in the UK. At Jidan Taj at around 6:40 p.m, they arrested 3 Bangladeshi men, a 33-year-old who had overstayed his visa and a pair aged 39 and 41 who had entered the country illegally. At Galaxy Pizza at around 8 p.m, officers found a 28-year-old man working in breach of his visa conditions. Both businesses face civil penalties of £10,000 per illegal worker unless they can prove the correct right to work checks were carried out. Last month, Sahid Mia, 45, and his brother, Mortuya Mia, 42, were ordered to pay £145,000 in confiscation orders and fines after pleading guilty to employing 9 illegal workers at the Taj Mahal in Westbourne and the Taj Mahal 2 in Poole Town Centre between 2008 and 2010. New Ash Green solicitor Ziad Al-Rawi struck off by a solicitor's disciplinary tribunal for spending £96,000 of clients' cash. A solicitor who used almost £100,000 of his clients' money for his own purposes has been struck off. Ziad Al-Rawi from New Ash Green, Dartford, Kent, withdrew £96,000 from his client account and used some of the cash to repay a personal loan and to cover the cost of an internet marketing course. The solicitor's disciplinary tribunal heard that as well as making improper withdrawals, Mr Al-Rawi failed to make up the shortfall promptly and did not make the necessary regular checks on the client account. His firm, Ashton Page, was closed by the Solicitors Regulation Authority in January last year when the misuse of client money was discovered. Mr Al-Rawi told the hearing the matter arose because of personal and professional circumstances at the time, that the money was repaid to clients and he was of previous good character. The tribunal found he had acted dishonestly and, as well as striking Mr Al-Rawi off the roll of solicitors, ordered him to pay £11,000 costs. Mr Al-Rawi has 21 days from the STD's publication of its decision to appeal. World at 8, which he will, the English language and taking the blame not being their strong suit. Mohammed Imran Malik, 30, charged in relation to Operation Sanctuary. A man is due in court after being charged in relation to an investigation into sex crimes which has so far seen 59 people arrested. Mohammed Imran Malik has been charged with kidnap and assault as part of Operation Sanctuary. Malik, 30, of Beaconsfield Street, Newcastle, is due to appear at Newcastle Magistrates Court. Operation Sanctuary was launched in January 27th and is investigating alleged sex crimes on up to 80 vulnerable women and girls in the Newcastle area. World at 8. Why is it the word vulnerable is used as an excuse for these sex attacks? European news. Dutch populist politician Geert Wilders leads his followers in anti-Moroccan chant. Amsterdam. The Dutch right-wing populist politician Geert Wilders has led his supporters in an anti-Moroccan chant. At a party meeting Wednesday evening in The Hague, where his Freedom Party is set to win the most votes in municipal elections, Wilders asked supporters whether they wanted more or fewer Moroccans in the Netherlands. His supporters chanted back "fewer, fewer, fewer" before breaking into applause. "Good, we're going to take care of that," Wilders said. World at 8 sounds like Top of the Pops for me. Netherlands. Prosecutors receive complaint over Geert Wilders' campaign for fewer Moroccans. An anonymous resident in The Hague, one of the only two places where Wilders' Freedom Party, PVV, is fighting for seats on the local council, submitted the complaint to the public prosecutor's branch office for the city. Wilders has sought to make The Hague's large and concentrated immigrant population an issue in the local elections, which are being held on Wednesday. In a television interview he declared the fewer Moroccans there are in the Netherlands the better. Political opponents condemned the comments on one Labour PVDA candidate compared the PVV leader to Hitler, prompting Wilders to issue his own threat of legal action. Also seeking to retain his council seat is former PVV councillor Arnoud van Doorn, who converted to Islam after leaving the party and has now founded the Unity Party, the PVDE. France. Toulouse Jewish leader urges young Jews to leave. 2 years after the murder of 4 Jews in Toulouse, the president of the French city's Jewish community encouraged young Jews to leave France. Ari Ben Samoun said that young Jews should move away because they cannot practice Judaism openly and without fear in Toulouse. "I won't deny that yes, I encourage the younger people to make Aliyah, immigrate to Israel or go elsewhere, where they can thrive in open Judaism, emancipated and without constantly fearing over what tomorrow will bring," Ben Samoun said in an interview Monday with the I24 television news channel. World news. Ukraine-Europe deal may cause unrest in East. Kharkiv, Ukraine. Having lost control of Crimea, Ukraine moved Friday to strengthen ties to Europe in a pact that may spark political unrest in East Ukraine, where many support Russian and some want to secede. The European Union and Ukraine signed elements of a political and economic agreement Friday, committing Ukraine to a deal that President Viktor Yanukovych had rejected in favour of better ties to Moscow. That rejection sparked massive protests in the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, where most people favoured closer ties to Europe. The protests led to Yanukovych's overthrow but also gave rise to anti-Kiev protests in Crimea and eventually a vote there Sunday to secede. Finally, Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin officially annexed Crimea. In the eastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, pro-Russian and pro-Europe protesters have clashed sporadically for weeks. The city, near the border with Russia, was for decades under control of the communist Soviet Union, Russia's predecessor, and signs of this past are everywhere. Soviet-style architecture is omnipresent, as are statues of Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet dictatorship, which dissolved in 1991. Unlike in Kiev, where Lenin's statue was torn down and its bust scrawled with graffiti, in Kharkiv the Soviet founder towers over the city's central Freedom Square. In late February, pro-Western demonstrators wanted to pull down the statue but decided against it because they worried it would have collapsed the roof of the subway below. The attempt angered Ukrainians who look fondly on the days of the Soviet Union, some of whom hold a daily vigil at the statue. The mostly ageing crowd accuses protesters in Kiev of being violent fascists and thugs trying to destroy a culture that venerates Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin's victory over Adolf Hitler in World War II. Events in Kiev have forced us to stand further away from the central government, said Alexandra Alexandrovsky, a political consultant to the federal deputy of Yanukovych's Party of the Regions. But we don't want to live in any other country. But it's unlikely that Kharkiv could do anything other than accept a takeover if Russian tanks rumbled in. There's a saying in Kharkiv, when the Russian tanks arrive in Kharkiv, they will be greeted with flowers, Alexandrovsky said. Russian troops storm Ukraine airbase in Crimea, shots fired. Shooting and explosions have been heard as Russian troops, backed by armoured vehicles, stormed a Ukraine airbase in Crimea. Reports say at least one person was injured during the assault on Belbek base near Sevastopol. The base is now said to be under Russian control. Earlier, several hundred unarmed protesters seized a Ukrainian naval base at Novo-Fedorivka, western Crimea. Pro-Russian militia has also been seizing Ukrainian Navy ships. The BBC's Ian Purnell in Crimea says the Ukrainian troops on the peninsula feel beleaguered and abandoned by their chiefs in Ukraine. On Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a law formalising Russia's takeover of Crimea from Ukraine, despite fresh sanctions from the EU and the US. In Belbek, 2 armoured personnel carriers burst through the walls of the base, followed by Russian troops firing weapons in the air. An ambulance was then seen entering the base amid reports that at least one person was injured. The Ukrainian soldiers were later gathered at the base main square in front of the heavily armed Russian troops. The storming followed an ultimatum by the Russians to surrender. Thought for the day: is it a question of loyalty? Everything nowadays centres around loyalty, or rather the lack of it. And it is this lack of loyalty that makes me worried for the future, not only for this country and land, but its peoples and its government. Loyalty is an old-fashioned word and entirely ignored by the Marxist diversity-led establishment, New World Order, or whatever you like to call a clutching of people with a self-absorbed cell for a brain at the top. These unnamed and unknown personas may be well regarded for their agendas, but they are self-absorbed on a cellular level and seem to, like an amoeba, divide and multiply and conquer at an alarming rate. Loyalty, the term in the dictionary, is the state or quality of being loyal, allegiance, also devoted, dutiful, immovable, patriotic, true blue and trustworthy. The meaning of disloyal is false, perfidious, traitorous, unfaithful and untrustworthy. All terms which England is only too aware of now. I'm a person for rules and regulations and laws. We need laws and we need standards, but also to run along those deeds and words we need loyalty, none of which any of the successive governments have provided, and indeed have aligned themselves and us to an institution which doesn't know the meaning of the word loyal or any of its derivatives, that of the European Parliament. Our royalty, whilst balancing on the fine lines of Marxism and power to the people, brigade and media, do not have the powers any more to be loyal or to inspire loyalty. Indeed, the Olympics have more power in this country to inspire loyalty than our royalty. And this is deliberate. Europe does not want any sovereign states. The EU are predominantly Marxist in thought and deed, and royals of any description or creed are not in the game plan. Our Queen Elizabeth has signed away any rights she might have had in vetoing any plan not fit for British or English purpose, and her Christmas speeches denote just how careful she has to be. She has not survived all these years by not bending in the breeze. Likewise, our governments who are disloyal to a man. And how does this disloyalty show itself? By allowing, encouraging and paying for massive immigration, or rather voluntary genocide, on behalf of the people. Allowing borrowing on a supreme scale of indifference, and then whilst making the people and local councils take harrowing and unnecessary cuts to their budgets, they still continue to pay out billions of pounds to foreigners who willingly take up their beds and come over here to double the insult. It is all a vast form of disloyalty to the flag and to you, the voters. Now we come to disloyalty nearer home, nearer the British National Party and within nationalist circles. It is not news that many of our splinter groups, new nationalist-based parties, blog sites, whatever, make no secret of their personal dislike of our chairman Nick Griffin MEP. I've lost count of the amount of times I've heard the words, "I will crush Nick Griffin. Nick Griffin must go. I will make it my force in life to end the BNP. As long as he is in power, the party will go nowhere. And the best one of all, when he goes, the BNP will be reformed and saved." I am sure we've all heard them, seen them, read them, and ignored them. Unfortunately, there are some people in power who have not ignored them and jumped on the proverbial "I hate Nick Griffin" bandwagon, which is, I regret to say, heavily laden with a bunch of generally misinformed misanthropes, but in generating that big wave of disloyalty set the ball in motion for outsiders to cash in on them and their versions of the truth to the voters and the members. I may be a Griffinite, but even I will admit that our Nick has fallen prey to the wrong advice at the wrong time from the wrong people, and this has affected many of our good people and good nationalists who have left the British National Party, and in some cases the nationalist movement. The trouble with Chinese whispers is that they contain some truth. It may be little or more than a little, but it is the negative quality of these whispers that produce disloyalty, and disloyalty in a political party like ours, run along our lines, is like the plague. It spreads its tentacles far and wide. So for every one ex-official who vents his spleen in public, whether it be on the web or in speeches for other groups, there are at least 10 members who think he may well be right and either resign or cause more disruption within their own locale. All a form of disloyalty, and most of it is unnecessary. No political leader of any political party is perfect. Their home life may not be perfect. They may employ their relations as staff, a thing which UKIP is well acquainted with. They may have brought people into their spheres that other officials don't like. Certain people may think they deserve well-paid jobs when they don't get them. They may object to a point in the manifesto which jars. They may dislike certain members or officials in that party, and much more. There is so much that can affect a political party within its ranks if it is allowed to breed. The point is, it mustn't be allowed to interfere with the main politics and running of that party. The party, like the state, is supreme. The members and officials should have the hive mentality that the Third Reich officials did. Many Germans did not agree with many of Hitler's moves, especially the old Prussian Guard, but they got on with it. Europe has never seen, and probably will never see again, a force so united in its totalitarianism and its goals as the Third Reich. Regardless of your stance on whether or not 6 million people perished or the whys and wherefores of the German people, they were a force to be reckoned with before disloyalty reared its head within its ranks. There is nothing one can do about disloyalty. It breeds dissemination and vulnerability within a party. It is an ever-increasing ball which gathers momentum and a hell of a lot of moss along the way, whilst destroying the principles it stood for in the first place. My problem is that what will these disseminators do if the British National Party goes the way they want it to? There is no one waiting in the wings like a messiah to take over from Nick Griffin, and indeed the one, amongst the many traits he has, is the vitality and energy that drives him and the party forward, whatever the weather and whoever the opposition may be. All the Nick haters and all the BNP old guard who revert back to the good old days don't seem to be aware of the fact that even when we were at our peak in 2009, the start of the Chinese whispers had just begun, and the government agents, prevaricators and hate-mongers proceeded to have a field day on leadership challenges with only months in between, salaries, legal proceedings from many of these dissidents who had been egged on by self-inflated would-be politicians of new nationalist parties and think tanks. The final lie being that ordinary members or officials would be liable for various financial costs. And all had the one prize at the end of Nick Griffin and the end of the British National Party. I may have left the BNP for 5 weeks working with what was supposed to be a campaign group aligned with the BNP, but turned out to be a totally different animal and was an unknowing part of an orchestrated coup, but my loyalty to the party and Nick has never wavered, and it never will. Like other leaders, he is far from perfect. He has feet of clay like all of us, but his heart's in the right place, and that is what counts. He is a true nationalist, warts and all, and what other party could fill the gap? left by the demolition of the BNP. Voters, members and officials need to think very carefully about the hive mentality and what could happen to our country if the main voice of nationalism became quiet. Do you think all of these ex-nationalists would become viable? One, to my knowledge, is retiring on monies made from the EU and family working there, not for him fighting our cause. Another is only in it to destroy the nationalist vote and prevent Nick from going back to the EU, where he has done some very good work. Another is in it for the money with backing from the backers of the EDL in the States, and many other dissidents have nothing to go to at all other than their own websites where they rule okay in their own homes. There will be no nationalist party with any political credibility at all if the BNP is destroyed, and this is the direct result of disloyalty. UKIP, whilst exhorting immigration and stacking away vast sums of money from the EU, would never take the place of the BNP, and indeed do not take any ex-members from this party on principle, because in order to get the votes of the middle classes they don't want to appear racist, which in fact they are. They're anti-white. So that would leave a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. And who do you think would get into that vacuum? Islam. The one thing that can be said for Islam is that its followers are loyal, not only to the point of fanaticism, but loyal to their cause and their religion. And you have to admire that when the one party that can save this country is suffering from the lack of loyalty and the hive mentality. To see any political party or movement succeed, you must care little about personal issues, financial issues, personalities, even yourself in relation to that party. The party is paramount. The movement and its issues are paramount. You don't join a party to tear it to bits when the going gets tough. That is cowardice, not bravery, and has no place in the nationalist cause when we have such a fight on our hands in the first place. Think very carefully this year and next year of what Britain could lose and what the consequences could be to you, your country, your land and your family. And finally, the young will be old one day, if they're lucky. Yesterday my daughter emailed me again asking why I didn't do something useful with my time. Like sitting around the pool and drinking wine is not a good thing. Talking about my doing something useful seems to be her favourite topic of conversation. She was only thinking of me and suggested I go down to the seniors centre and hang out with the guys. I did this, and when I got home last night I decided to teach her a lesson about staying out of my business. I emailed her and told her I joined a parachute club. She replied, "Are you nuts? You're about 68 years old and now you're going to start jumping out of airplanes." I told her I even got a membership card and emailed a copy to her. She immediately phoned me. "Good grief, where are your glasses? This is a membership to a prostitute club, not a parachute club." Oh man, I'm in trouble again. I really don't know what to do now. I signed up for 5 jumps a week. The line went quiet and her friend picked up the phone and said that she'd fainted. Life as a senior citizen is not getting any easier, but sometimes it can be fun. This presenter says, "When are one's kids going to realise that we've all been there? We were all born, all went to schools, colleges, bunked off, all went to work, all had kids, divorces, love affairs, one-night stands, new men and women or whatever was your vice, got drunk, got drunker, tried everything that needed trying out because we didn't listen to our parents either." I remember in my 20s, having had 2 children, I went to a firm's do and got so bladdered that I fell very gracefully down 8 flights of fire stairs and landed at the bottom before the 2 guys, who I never saw again, caught up with me to take me to yet another party. There is nothing new under the sun that has not been tried or been done. You have been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and a very safe weekend.